Have you ever wondered what exactly creates executive presence? More specifically, why do some leaders naturally command trust, credibility, and influence before they have established a clear track record, while others possess exceptional credentials yet struggle to be perceived as executive level leaders? Traditional leadership development attributes executive presence to communication style, body language, emotional intelligence, and confidence. While these characteristics influence perception, they raise another question. What creates those characteristics in the first place? This particular video will explore the possibility that executive presence is not a communication skill, but rather the observable expression of deeper biological, psychological, and identity based systems operating in alignment. So, by the end of this video, you'll understand why executive presence may be better understood as the integration of three foundational systems, which are nervous system regulation, belief systems, and identity. You'll also understand why sustainable executive presence cannot be created through behavioral modification alone. Executive presence has become one of the most discussed and least clearly defined concepts in leadership development. Organizations frequently identify executive presence as a distinguishing characteristic of senior leaders. Despite its importance, there is little agreement regarding what executive presence actually is. Descriptions often include qualities such as confidence, composure, credibility, decisiveness, influence, and strategic communication. Now, these observations describe what executive presence looks like. They do not explain where it comes from. So this distinction is very important. Now, describing behaviors is different from explaining the systems that actually produce the behaviors. To understand executive presence more completely, we must move beyond observable behaviors and examine the underlying processes that generate them. So rather than viewing executive presence as a collection of leadership behaviors, consider another possibility. Executive presence may be an emergent property. In systems theory, an emergent property is a characteristic that arises from the interaction of multiple components rather than from any single component operating independently. Now, applied to leadership, this suggests that executive presence may emerge when several internal systems become aligned. So, within the confidence frequency, which is my 8-week transformational coaching program, these systems have been identified, and they are the nervous system regulation, belief systems, and identity. Now, let's explore each particular pillar more closely. So, pillar one, nervous system regulation. A regulated nervous system supports emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, executive functioning, clear communication, strategic thinking, and adaptive decision making. Research by Stephen Purges demonstrates that the autonomic nervous system continuously evaluates cues of safety and danger through neuroception. So, when the nervous system consistently prioritizes protection, leadership behaviors become more difficult to access. So, what does that mean? That means that whenever we are stuck in a state of fear or shame, that makes it very hard for us to explore the different characteristics that are necessary in order to have executive presence. So if we're nervous to speak to a particular person because of their title, or if we are over explaining ourselves because we don't quite feel as if we are fully prepared, that takes away from our executive presence. So, when regulation increases, the brain is better able to support the cognitive functions associated with executive leadership. Now, the nervous system establishes the biological conditions under which executive presence becomes possible. So, now that we have reviewed pillar one, which is nervous system regulation, and we've identified that nervous system regulation is an important component of executive presence because it allows us to move out of the state of being fearful, right? Or the state of assuming that there is a threat in front of us. Let's move to pillar two, which is belief systems. Now, while biology creates the conditions for performance, beliefs shape interpretation. Beliefs influence perceived capability, expectations, behavioral choices, emotional responses, and attention. Now, a researcher by the name of Albert Bandura's work on self-efficacy demonstrated that beliefs regarding one's ability influence persistence, resilience, and performance. Also, Carol Dweck's research similarly demonstrated that underlying beliefs influence learning behavior and adaptation. Beliefs function as cognitive filters. They influence what information is noticed, how experiences are interpreted, and what actions appear possible. Leadership behavior is therefore influenced not only by biological regulation, but also by the internal assumptions through which experience is interpreted. So essentially, our belief systems act as a filter system in which we perceive our reality. So when we take on a belief system about ourselves that we're capable, we're confident, we can do anything, or better yet, if we take on the belief system that we are just about to have a conversation, right? We're not giving a presentation, we're just having a conversation. When we take on the belief system that we're just having a conversation, that allows us to speak more fluently, to speak more powerfully, and to speak more confidently. Why? Because we have reduced the amount of pressure that we have placed upon ourselves. So, our belief systems, again, act as the filter that dictate how we see ourselves, that ultimately dictate how we show up. Now that we have gone over belief systems, let's look at the final and third pillar, identity. Now, identity answers a different question. Not what do I believe? Instead, what do I understand who do I understand myself to be? So not only what do I believe about myself, but who do I believe or who do I understand myself to be? So identity influences standards, boundaries, decision making, communication, leadership style, and self expression. So, research in self concept psychology suggests that individuals generally behave in ways that remain consistent with their identity. When behavior repeatedly conflicts with identity, psychological tension often develops until either behavior or identity changes. I'll read that again. When behavior repeatedly conflicts with identity, psychological tension often develops until either behavior or identity changes. So, how does this correlate to executive presence? Let's look at it two ways. Let's say that you have the position of a senior manager, right? Or a senior delivery lead, but you have not upgraded your identity in what is identity? Identity would be your standards, your boundaries, your decision making, your communication, your leadership skill, your leadership style, and your self-expression. If you have not updated or upgraded your identity to that of a senior delivery lead, let's say that you're still behaving as a junior delivery lead, those two things are going to be conflicting with each other, right? So until you upgrade your identity to match the title that you actually have, you will be stuck in a cycle of not showing up in a way that aligns with the title that has been given to you. Now let's look at it the other way. Let's say that you are a senior delivery lead, right? However, you have upgraded your standards, boundaries, decision-making, communication style, leadership style, and self-expression to fit the identity of a senior delivery lead, or better yet, let's say a director, right? Your reality literally has to conform to meet the beliefs, the standards, the boundaries, the decision-making skills, the communication style, the leadership style, and the self-expression that you have deemed yourself worthy of having. So this is a key. This is a key to how you're able to get whatever position that you desire, regardless of the job market, regardless of the people that are in charge, regardless of whom or whatever you perceive to be blocking you. This is how you're able to literally bend your reality to get whatever you want. I'll put a stopper in that for now. I discuss a lot more of this within my 8-week coaching program, The Confidence Frequency, where I help high-performing women in technology delivery. This includes Scrum Masters, delivery leads, project managers, program managers, to elevate their identity to be the person that can obtain the particular salary that they desire, that can obtain that executive facing role without having to necessarily follow different techniques, right? Because when you change at an identity level, your entire reality has to conform in order to match the identity that you have dictated to it, right? So let's go ahead and move on. So with this particular concept of identity, again, standards, boundaries, decision-making, communication, leadership style, self-expression, research in self-concept psychology suggests that individuals generally behave in ways that remain consistent with their identity. And when behavior repeatedly conflicts with identity, psychological tension often develops until either behavior or identity changes. Identity, therefore, serves as the organizing framework through which beliefs and behavior become integrated. Now, let's look at the integration, why executive presence emerges. So these three systems do not operate independently. What are the three systems? Your nervous system regulation, your belief systems, and your identity. So these three systems do not operate independently. They continuously influence one another. A dysregulated nervous system reinforces protective beliefs. Protective beliefs reinforce limiting identities, and limiting identities influence behavior. Conversely, greater regulation supports more adaptive beliefs. Adaptive beliefs reinforce empowering identities, and empowering identities naturally influence communication, leadership, and decision making. Executive presence therefore becomes the observable expression of an integrated internal system. So this represents the central distinction within the confidence frequency, which is my 8-week transformational coaching program. Traditional leadership development often begins by modifying external behavior. So you speak differently, right? You go to Toastmasters and you learn how to speak differently. You stand differently. You may have an etiquette coach. You communicate differently, right? So our framework begins much earlier. We begin by asking, what systems are generating those behaviors? For this reason, the confidence frequency is organized around 3 developmental pillars. Nervous system regulation, creating biological conditions that support executive functioning and psychological flexibility. Belief recoding, replacing limiting interpretations with adaptive cognitive frameworks that support leadership, and identity recalibration, developing an internal self concept that is congruent with the level of leadership one intends to embody. So, when these three systems become increasingly aligned, executive presence no longer requires continuous performance. It becomes a natural expression of internal organization. So executive presence is commonly described through observable behavior. So let's look at these key takeaways. Research suggests those behaviors are influenced by deeper biological and psychological systems. Within the confidence frequency, executive presence is understood as the integration of nervous system regulation, belief systems, and identity. These systems influence communication, decision making, emotional regulation, confidence, and leadership behavior. Rather than treating executive presence as a skill to acquire, it may be more accurate to understand it as an emergent property of internal alignment. So, to close, many professionals spend years trying to improve how they are perceived. A different question may produce a different outcome. What internal systems are producing the version of me that others experience every day? When nervous system regulation, beliefs, and identity begin working together rather than against one another, executive presence becomes less about projecting authority and more about embodying it. At the confidence frequency, this is the work that we do. We help women in technology leadership, technology delivery leadership, to build executive presence from the inside out through nervous system regulation, belief recoding, and identity recalibration. If you're ready to become the obvious choice for executive facing leadership opportunities, not by performing confidence, but by embodying it, I invite you to apply for a confidence frequency strategy session. You can learn more in my bio.